Hey, how's it going, friends? Thank you for tuning in to VR Revelations. Welcome. Please make sure you give this video a like and make sure you subscribe for future content. Also, if you want to support the channel, make sure you check out the links down below in the description. So let's jump right into it, guys. It is February 28, the year of our Lord 2023, and things are rapidly developing in Ukraine, especially right now in the Battle of Bakhmut. Now, Russia is literally within hours of completing an encirclement of Ukrainian forces in Bakhmut, as I've been covering on this channel, and many other channels and analysts have been reporting on this also, since this is the main focus right now of what is going on in Ukraine. Because again, don't let the West, CNN, NBC, all these other Western propaganda news sources tell you any differently, since they will try to minimize the victory of Russia right now, the victory that Russia is about to achieve. They're going to try and downplay the significance of this victory, of the takeover of this city, but they are directly contradicted by their vassal in Ukraine, President Zelensky. Now, Zelensky has said publicly that they were going to fight to the last soldier in Bakhmut, that Bakhmut was an impenetrable fortress, and that it was a symbol of Ukrainian resistance. And so the Ukrainians, especially Zelensky, have made a lot about Bakhmut. They've made a big deal about it, and it's about to collapse. Literally, they are being encircled right now, as you can see here, by this live UA map, which you can go Google. As I've said before, this map was created by Ukrainian engineers, so it is very pro-Ukrainian. They actually take a while to update the map whenever Russian forces do advance. So I will be showing you a second map that is a little bit more accurate as to what is going on the ground right now. But this is pretty accurate here. You don't have to be an expert to see that if you are a soldier caught in the middle here of the city and these are enemy forces, that you better get out of there before you get killed or encircled, which is exactly what's happening. You can see here that the Russian forces are clearly pushing in from the east of Bakhmut, from the south, and from the north. Now, especially in the north, there's been quite a push here by the Russian forces. Ukraine tried to deny just yesterday that the Russian forces actually had control of Yahitne. Well, now, as we're about to read, just the next day, as of the making of this video, it's still February 28th, so they literally said that Zelensky is thinking about giving the order to pull his forces out of Bakhmut, guys. But just yesterday, they literally said that the Russian forces did not, in fact, take Yahitne. So there's a whole bunch of lies right now. Again, they're trying to downplay and deny anything that's positive concerning the Russian army. Right now, you can't blame them. This is war propaganda after all. But what is about to happen here is that the Russian forces have actually advanced past Yahitne to the north of Bakhmut. They're now trying to take this small town over here. Let me actually switch over to the other map, which actually has the names in English, I believe. So check this map out, guys. Pretty cool map also. You can see Bakhmut right here. Now, here is the town I'm talking about, Kromov. Now, right up here is Yahitne. As I told you before, this map is a lot more accurate because Russian forces have been reported to be close to Kromov now. Now, the danger for the Ukrainian forces in Bakhmut here is that their last clear way of escape was this highway or this road right here along Kromov, as you can see here. It's actually numbered 00506, and so now that is even too dangerous for the Ukrainian forces to use to pull out of Bakhmut right now, since they will be exposed to attacks by the Russian forces coming from the direction of Yahidna. Now, this is all very close, guys. We're talking about meters here, okay? So this is all close here. And so now the Ukrainian forces are literally just, you know, waiting for Zelensky to give the order, and I'm sure they're not going to care how, what road they're going to use. They're going to try to save their lives and use whatever is left here, whether it's field, rivers, and whatnot, to pull out of there. But again, it's a lot more difficult to retreat when you have to go through off-roads, through fields, and all of these things, right? Your equipment can get stuck. The retreat is a lot more disorganized and a lot slower, which exposes you to the enemy forces a lot more. And so, really, the Russians have carried out a masterful maneuver here. For a while, it looked like the Russians just couldn't penetrate into Bakhmut, but we could clearly see that they were making advances around Bakhmut, and now I think it's pretty obvious to everybody what the Russian plan was here. They're actually, focusing on Bakhmut, but they've done this pincer movement as they've done before, such as we saw to the north of Bakhmut over here in Soledar, which was also like a mini Bakhmut. It was a stronghold of Ukrainian forces, but of course they were overcome by the Russians. But now the Russians have passed Bakhmut here much more aggressively, and they're actually going towards these other towns here, especially Chasiz Yar, which was predicted to be the Ukrainians' fallback position, since it's supposed to be at a higher elevation, allowing for a good position to, rain down artillery on Russian forces who would possibly be in Bakhmut. But now it looks like the Russian forces have foreseen this, and so I don't know what the Ukrainian forces are going to do here. I mean, they're going to have to retreat here all the way back, into these other towns, or if we zoom out, possibly regroup back at Kramatorsk and Slavyansk. But again, Zelensky is very stubborn, guys, so he is literally holding to the last second here. I'm guessing he's waiting for some sort of miracle or something. It's probably difficult for him to actually watch what is happening right now as the red Russian wave here swallows up Bakhmut. But anyways, let's go ahead and jump into some articles. I'm going to show you one from CNN here, guys, and then I'll jump over to War News 24/7. But I do want to show you a very pro-Ukrainian Western news source, of course, CNN, spewing out all the Western propaganda here at its full. But even they can only keep up appearances for so long, right? At some point, when it's obvious physically on the ground that the Russian forces control the area, they do have to report on this. And it looks like they actually had an interview here with an advisor to Zelensky. And let's go ahead and take a look at what he said, because he clearly states that Zelensky is getting ready to pull out forces out of Bakhmut. Now, this isn't just, his opinion or something that he's predicting. Remember, just a couple of months ago, a close advisor to Zelensky was fired for saying just a small thing incorrectly in an interview on television. If you remember, Russia launched a missile at Ukraine, right, at one of those power plants or the energy infrastructure, and it turns out that the Ukrainian forces actually shot down one of the missiles, which fell down on an apartment building. I believe it was in the Dnipro area. Correct me if I'm wrong. But immediately Ukraine came out and accused Russia of being terrorists, of attacking innocents and civilians directly and carrying out these terrorist attacks. And then Zelensky's advisor actually, I guess he didn't get the memo, so he came out on in an interview, and they asked him if the missile was directly aimed at the apartment building, and he said that no, that the Ukrainian forces had shot it down. And then literally like the next couple of days, They were asking for him to be fired. They were, calling him a whole bunch of names, and he resigned right after that. He was pretty much sacked. And funny enough, afterwards, he had some interviews where he was calling Zelensky essentially an idiot for mismanaging the war and everything going on. And so we can clearly see that, whatever this advisor here is saying is clearly being monitored and watched by Zelensky and his administration. So they're trying to foreshadow, right? They're trying to give us the hint of what they are getting ready to do here in Bakhmut. So let's go ahead and take a read here. It says, Ukrainian forces engaged in a months-long brutal fight with Russian forces around the city of Bakhmut. Let me read that again. Ukrainian forces engaged in a months-long brutal fight with Russian forces around the city of Bakhmut could strategically pull back if needed. And it's definitely needed. It was needed weeks ago, guys. An advisor to President Volodymyr Zelensky said Tuesday. Now, here's what he said. Russia is trying to encircle it right now, and they're using their best Wagner troops. Now, remember, the Wagner troops, we've been hearing a lot about them. They are essentially Russian forces, but this is a private military corporation, much like you would find in the United States with these militias, these mercenary groups. But they've become very formidable, and they've made quite a name for themselves by leading the charge effectively, as we saw in Solidar and as we're seeing here. Now, the West has been making fun of the Wagner Group because apparently a lot of their conscripts or their soldiers are former criminals. They're former criminals. They recruit these men from prison. I'm assuming they just got out of prison, or they could pull them out straight out of prison, making some sort of deal. Now, the Wagner forces have said that they are trying to recruit less prisoners, but regardless, you can't make fun of them if they're actually beating you. I mean, you're not even facing Russia's elite forces. You're facing what you call, ex-convicts, and they're literally about to take what was supposed to be an impenetrable fortress of Ukraine. So that just, that just shows you how effective this Wagner Group is. And now let's read what he says here. So he said, Russia is trying to encircle it right now, and they're using their best Wagner troops. Apparently, the most well-trained and the most experienced to do that. Economic advisor Alexander Rodnyansky said, referencing the Wagner mercenary forces, our military is obviously going to weigh all the options. So far, they've held the city, but if need be, they will strategically pull back because we're not going to sacrifice all of our people just for nothing. He told CNN's Isa Suarez. Now, that is exactly what they have been doing since the war started. They've been doing this all for nothing, pretty much just based on the U.S.'s interest and NATO interest. So this really has been all for nothing. But anyways, there you have an advisor to Zelensky, clearly foreshadowing a pullback out of Bakhmut there. So let's jump over to this War News 24/7 article here, since they do go more into detail on what is going on. So it says here, PMC Wagner forces are in full control of the northern and eastern sides of Bakhmut city, with the Wagnerite vanguard having entered its center. The information was broadcast a while ago to Russian media. The situation is dramatic for the Ukrainian forces, with their command not realizing the magnitude of the disaster. A while ago, Kyiv announced sending reinforcements to the city instead of withdrawing the remaining 7,000 to 10,000 soldiers. At this time, the situation of the Ukrainian forces has noticeably deteriorated. Wagner's forces are 800 meters from the supply road at Kromov and about 700 meters from the supply road at Ivanovsko. Both roads are under the control of Russian artillery. Some videos show Ukrainian forces retreating from the city through fields, avoiding hideways. That's what I was mentioning, guys. They can't take these highways now because they're too dangerous. These two last remaining highways, this was really the last remaining road here near Kremov. And so now they're pretty much just scattering throughout these fields, hoping not to be spotted and killed, while at the same time you have still Ukrainian soldiers here waiting for the order for Zelensky's mercy to allow them to retreat out of that certain death. So it goes on to say here, inside the city, the Russian forces reach the bank of the Bakhmutka River. Those Ukrainians who managed to leave, many have been trapped in apartment buildings. I'm guessing it's talking about the citizens there. A few days ago, the Russian artillery destroyed the only river bridge. From the north, Wagner forces captured Stupki district, Malolishivska station, and are advancing towards the center of Ilanovska district. The Wagnerites have already occupied several Ukrainian positions and are approaching the Azov factory from the north. At the same time, Russian forces advanced south of Berhivska and took partial control of the lake reservoir of the same name that touches the outskirts of Bogotanovka. East and south of Bakhmut, the Russian army advanced north of Optine suburb, reaching Zhelyanyi Street. In addition, Russian troops managed to enter the first buildings of the Zobashivska district. So we have some video here. It says artillery working on armed forces of Ukraine positions in Bakhmut direction. So this looks like a Twitter video showing Russian artillery attacks on Ukrainian forces. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. All right, so that wasn't very clear there. It was clearly nighttime. Okay, we have another video here of a Wagner sniper hitting a Ukrainian. So that looks like it could be footage of a soldier getting killed directly, guys. So I'm not going to show that. If you want to see this more detailed footage, they don't really show like gory footage, but you know, I don't want to show anything like that on YouTube. So you can go check that out at War News 24/7. Remember, this is a Greek website. Make sure you use the translator on your web browser. I recommend Google since they do have the best translator. But we do have another video here. It says soldiers of the 93rd Mechanized Brigade fight off Wagner mercenaries in Bakhmut. Okay, so looks like we have an angle from the Ukrainian side here fighting these Wagner forces taking over Bakhmut, which is completely destroyed, guys. So let's go ahead and take a look. Right, it sent us over to Twitter here. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look from Twitter here. Again, guys, you can go check out my Twitter handle at VR Revelations since we're here.
Давай, давай, выходи. А ну! Гандоны нахуй! Давай! Туда, куда надо! Бля, немцы, сука, по ноге попали. Пидорасы. Давай, выходи.
Wow, pretty incredible, guys, that we get this type of insight in our day and age of technology. This isn't a video game, guys. You can see these soldiers there. Whether you're for Ukrainians or for Russians, these are men, these are sons, these are fathers. Yes, they have an ideology, they have a cause, but it's, you know, pretty real and raw footage, guys, of the world in which we live in there. As you see these men peeking out of the rubble there, shooting, then literally just sitting there thinking of what must be their families as they're getting ready to die, guys. Now, there are reports here coming out stating that these Ukrainian soldiers that are sent to the front lines have about 4 hours before they get killed. So the thing right now is dire in Bakhmut, and these poor soldiers, they can't retreat or back out of Bakhmut since they will be called traitors. They literally have to wait for the order from Zelensky to pull out. So this is a very good video here, guys. This is drone footage, I believe, that was released by Russia, showing the devastation in Bakhmut. Again, this is incredible insight, guys, that we have into a major conflict between modern armies. Now, back in the Roman times and any time before our day and age, only the soldiers actually involved in the battle could go and tell the stories of the war. Now, guys, we actually get video here as I'm showing you as we're watching here together, guys. So, doesn't matter what we're watching here. We got to be very reverent and aware of what we're seeing here. But yeah, Russia, of course, is using drones to carry out recon missions, to attack Russian forces, and they are also using them to show what what they can do to what Zelensky referred to as an impenetrable fortress. So let's go ahead and take a look at Bakhmut here. Yeah, very devastating, very terrible there, guys. Could very well be mistaken for Afghanistan, Iraq, or Syria. But anyways, let's not get into that. Let's read a little bit more here. Maneuver of Russian forces with Bogdanovka. Wagner's forces could much more quickly close the gap around Bakhmut by bringing both the Kromovo and Ivanovsko axes under physical and artillery control. Instead, PMC Wagner forces made a maneuver and advanced towards Bogdanovka. After capturing the settlements of Berkovka and Yagodnoye northwest of Bakhmut, the Russian forces were directed not to Kromovo, which is on the road to Chaziz Yar, but to Bogdanovka. This settlement is located northwest of Kromovo. The maneuver of the Russian units, if successful, will strike from behind the Ukrainian units in Kromovo and at the same time control the heights in the Chaziz Yar area, cutting off the last road to Bakhmut. The Russians want to control a large area they see as dangerous for a future Ukrainian counterattack using tanks. Remember, the U.S. and all the other nations supporting Ukraine pledged, tanks, more artillery, which will be arriving pretty soon in Ukraine. At least some of them, I believe some Leopard 2 tanks have been reported in Ukraine already. Again, this is going to take several months. Some of the tanks are going to arrive now, and then it's estimated that other equipment like the American Abrams tanks could arrive as late as next year, guys. So, this support is coming in little by little, right? Drip by drip, drop by drop. So it's not enough to make a major difference for Ukraine here. But the Russians are very aware of all of this, and so they're trying to gain as much ground and take advantage of the opportunity here before some of this support arrives in Ukraine. As we read here, Let's read it again. The Russians want to control a large area they see as dangerous for a future Ukrainian counterattack using tanks. Considering the fact that the first leopards from Poland, arrived in Ukraine, and according to some reports, were sent right to Chasiz Yar. So here's Bakhmut. We just read here that, as we see here on the map, Russian forces are sort of, some of the Wagner forces, or you could say Russian forces, are moving past Bakhmut and are actually diverting some forces here towards Kromov, towards Bogdanivka, and we can see here from the south they are pretty close to Chasiz Yar. Now, this was reported to be the fallback point for the Ukrainian forces were they to be defeated in Bakhmut, as they are now. And it was supposed to be a pretty strategic fallback for the Ukrainian forces, since I believe Chasiz Yar is at a higher elevation, which would have made a good rallying point, a fallback point for Ukraine in order to allow them to launch let's say, artillery strikes at the Russian forces in Bakhmut. But, the Russians were looking ahead, and even before we started seeing this major encirclement of Bakhmut, we could see that they were clearly trying to push towards Chasiz Yar. So it looks like all of this, guys, is getting ready to fall here in one major event here. And again, Bakhmut here, it's already done, guys. It's finished. There's no way here for the Ukrainians to rescue Bakhmut. Really, we're just keeping an eye out on the soldiers in Bakhmut. Are they going to pull out, or are they going to be captured? Again, guys, just look at this. It looks like a dragon's mouth here, just getting ready to swallow Bakhmut for dinner. But once Bakhmut falls, guys, they're so close to Chasiz Yar that the Ukrainian forces are going to have to fall back to these other towns here, if not to Kramatorsk and Slavyansk, in order to help the Ukrainian forces to set up as much defenses as they can. Because right after this, you can be sure that the Russian forces are going to continue to advance rather rapidly to these other towns. Of course, we also see a major offensive here taking place around Zveresk. And so at the same time, as we see this major expansion here out of Bakhmut, we're going to see the Russian forces also launch out towards these other towns here, and we'll probably begin to see an encirclement of Zveresk. So we can clearly see this sort of massive red wave, slow-moving red tsunami, right, over Ukraine. And as that tsunami of Russian soldiers encounters these fortified cities, which let's just call them like rocks, the water sort of just adjusts to the rock and moves around it, and the wave continues to push slowly past those fortified cities. But again, eventually that wave does collapse in on that city. And that is what's happening here, guys. They're not bogging down right now with Bakhmut, with Zveresk. They are fighting directly, right, in these major cities. But at the same time, they continue to move past those where there's less resistance, while at the same time creating these encirclements. So this is some pretty incredible, maneuvering here, strategic maneuvering that we're witnessing, guys. Now, again, this is historic, everything that is taking place right now. Again, I'm neither pro-Russian nor pro-Ukrainian. I'm pro-Bible. I'm pro-God, right? I'm pro-Jesus Christ. I believe in the scriptures. I believe that we are living in prophetic times. Now, I'm not saying the world is going to end tomorrow. There's a lot of speculation about that already, even from people that don't believe in the Bible. But I do believe that all these events are the beginning of what will unfold into a world-ending scenario, a nuclear war, Armageddon, a nuclear holocaust. But again, as I've been saying since the beginning, I don't think that's going to take place over Ukraine. I don't think the U.S. and all these other powers are willing to risk their nations over a nation that's right on the border of Russia. I do believe they're trying to squeeze as much benefit as they can out of this conflict. I think this was the plan all along for the U.S. To sort of encircle Russia right through NATO, to bring threats right to its border. Now, again, the U.S. would never allow Russia to install missiles in Mexico or Canada, even if those nations befriended Russia. The U.S. would absolutely not respect either nation's sovereignty if that were to be the case. And if you think that's crazy, it already happened during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Literally, Cuba, Fidel Castro befriended the Russians. Now, the U.S. supposedly supports the sovereignty of nations, but when Fidel Castro allowed the Russians to install missiles in Cuba, the U.S. literally lost its mind. They were getting ready to, start a nuclear apocalypse. And so, thankfully, the Russians, pulled their forces out of Cuba, and, the U.S., they started to calm down. Also, I think Kennedy was in charge at that point. His generals were literally pressuring him to go to war, to launch the nukes. But, Kennedy, I believe, did keep a pretty cool head during the Cuban Missile Crisis. So the U.S. is now doing the same thing to Russia here. But again, I don't think the U.S. is going to go into nuclear war over Ukraine. I think that's the reason why they've been holding back all their support, guys. And, the support that they have pledged, they're going to do it through an extended period of time, in such a way where they make it look like, they are supporting Ukraine, but at the same time, they're not, they're not wasting a lot of their actual good weapons in this conflict. Now, we know Ukraine has been asking for those good weapons, right? For the Abrams tanks, for the longer range missiles, for the fighter jets. I'm sure Zelensky would even love some nuclear bombs in Ukraine. Remember, crazy Zelensky near the beginning of the conflict was actually calling for a preemptive nuclear strike on Moscow, guys. Don't forget that. But the U.S., they understand they understand that Russia is a nuclear superpower. I would say the world's strongest nuclear superpower. But again, let's not get into a debate. China, the U.S., Russia, either of those nations, even England, these other nuclear superpowers have the capability, guys, to essentially destroy the world on their own. That's why I do believe that, God allowed the discovery of nuclear weapons in this day and age to fulfill the end times prophecies. And eventually, I think it will lead to that. And you'll have these two sides, right, where you have the United States, Russia, and China, along with their respective allies, sort of having these two orders in the world, right? A multipolar world that Vladimir Putin has been talking about. And then, we'll have the major economic conflict between these world powers. Of course, it's pretty obvious now that we might have a conflict here soon between the U.S. and China over Taiwan. I'm sure that's going to spiral out of control. It's going to have major economic repercussions for the whole world. But again, I think this is going to lead into a new world order. And then later on, I think it will culminate in a world-ending event as prophesied in the Bible, right? Where all nations will go each other, then we'll actually have all-out nuclear war. And again, you don't have to be spiritual to see that this is all going in that direction, guys. This is what everybody is rumoring. Those that are sober-minded realize that we're talking about nuclear war, guys. We're not fighting with swords and shields anymore, or just guns like they did, in World War One and for most of World War Two. We're talking about the power of the atom bomb now, guys, and I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's here in order to fulfill God's will, right? Again, all these governments that you see here on this planet, guys, they have to pass away, just like the great Roman Empire, just like the Egyptians, just like the Greeks, Alexander the Great, the Persians before them, the Babylonians, Napoleon, all these great men that tried to make a great name for themselves and conquer the world. All their kingdoms have passed, just as the Bible said they would. Hitler's Third Reich, which he said was going to last for 1,000 years, only lasted 10. And the United States, as great as it is, as much as it boasts about being the leader of the free world and all its freedom and all those things, has also become corrupted in the eyes of God. It's even more corrupt than Russia. I'm not justifying Russia, guys, but again, I think God is using all these nations to bring about the fulfillment of His word. So my message is not pessimistic, it's rather optimistic, guys. I want to let you know that I believe that everything going on right now was spoken of in the Bible. I believe that God is in control, and I believe that if you trust in His word, you don't need to fear these things, guys. This isn't just a coincidence. This existence isn't an accident. These wars and all the evil and all the corruption that is taking place happens because we live in a fallen world. We live in a world full of evil, full of sin. And again, it might sound strange, right? Or you might not like hearing that religious talk. But remember, Vladimir Putin is a Christian, an Orthodox Christian. He believes in Jesus Christ, guys. He wears a little cross. He goes to church. There's videos out there. And yours truly, President Biden, is also a Christian. He's a Catholic. The majority of the population in the U.S. is Christian. The majority of the population in Russia is Christian, right? They profess to believe in these things written in the Bible, but just because you call yourself a Christian doesn't really mean you are. See, a lot of these people are completely unaware of this whole spiritual angle or analysis, right, of what is going on right now. They talk about what is going on right now through a lens of politics, ideology, but they refuse to look at things through the Word of God, which I believe is where the wisdom lies. Anyways, guys, that is the situation right now in Bakhmut. It is pretty much already over in Bakhmut. A major defeat for Zelensky. It's going to be interesting to see now just how much or what the Western powers decide to do in their support for Ukraine. I think as we see the news coming out here that Bakhmut has fallen, we're going to see a lot of downplaying by the Western propaganda machine, right? They're going to try to say that this isn't a big deal. They're going to try to ignore the statements that Zelensky made, saying that it was a fortress. But I think everybody that is being honest about the conflict right now, that this is pretty much going to be a launching point here for the next massive attack by the Russian towards Kramatorsk and Slavyansk. And again, guys, I think big developments are coming. Don't rule out an attack through Belarus here, guys. within the next couple of weeks or months, because again, even though Ukraine doesn't really have a chance to defeat Russia, they can make the advancements of Russia a lot slower when they have this equipment that they are receiving from the West. And so Russia is very aware of this, and Russia doesn't want to extend this war much longer than it has already been going for. It doesn't benefit them to have a war right on their border. So they want to end this as quickly as possible. And I think the only way they're going to be able to do that is if they launch another attack on the capital through Belarus, possibly with Belarus joining, just as they did at the beginning of the conflict. Remember, they already did this at the beginning of the conflict. However, it was very, I would say, disorganized. They were sending a little bit of units. So it really didn't look like a full, large-scale invasion. But again, we hadn't really seen something like this since World War II, guys. So it looks like the Russians got their bearings. Remember, the Russians defeated Napoleon. They defeated Hitler. And they are definitely going to defeat Ukraine. Now, I'm not saying they're going to defeat the U.S., because once they do, I think that'll be the end of the world. But anyways, that's going to be it for this video, guys. It has already gone long enough. Thank you for tuning in. I'm trying to make as many videos as possible, guys. Remember, I do have a day job, so please, if you could help out this channel with a thumbs up and with a subscription, I would appreciate it very much. And remember, the truth is stranger than fiction. Thank you for tuning in. Have a wonderful day, and God bless.